Welcome to Almost Functional Gaming. We aim to help all followers of Russ and the Allfather to improve on the tabletop. List building, tournament recaps, unit reviews, weekly council of the Fang, and other tips to help us all go from almost functional to fully functional. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, check out our merch store and Almost Functional score tracker on Amazon.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Almost Functional 40 Clay. Back again with Aiden, and tonight we have a special guest, Alex.
Welcome, Alex. How you doing, man?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for making the time for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Alex, Spatho is that how you say it, Spatho?
Yeah, so my real last name is Spathopoulos, but that's too
Spathopoulos.
long for people to remember, so I just go by Spatho.
Spatho is a member of Team USA who actually got third at Worlds this year. And Alex was a member of the team playing Space Wolves. And we are so excited to have you on.
Thank you.
So my first question, Alex, is how long have you been played Space Wolves? Did they just put you on it for this? Have you played Wolves for a while?
So I've been a Space Marine. I started playing Warhammer in like the start of 9th. So it's kind of like when I came in, and I've always been like a Space Marine player. And ever since I kind of collected Space Marines, I kind of, whenever new rules come out, I'm always kind of collecting stuff. So I didn't play Space Wolves until like 10th because like it wasn't even until like halfway through 9th where I like got like into more competitive and like started collecting more armies other than just like, my first army. And really quickly in 10th, I was playing like Dark Angels and then Space Wolves. I think the first, like when I first got really into Space Wolves was specifically in the stealth Wolfen buff. When, I don't know if you guys remember, there was just a random data slate where they made Wolfen strength 6 and damage 2.
Out of nowhere.
And for me, that was really important because I was having this problem with Space Marines where they had a real trading problem into like weirdly tough. I called it the Maliceptor problem, where all these armies were running like 120 point hull monster thing with like a feel no pain or blank that they would just park on the objective immediately. And as a Space Marine player, you're like, well, my JPI won't crack this, but I'm not going to bring out my 400 point unit that can kill this. Like, how do I solve this? Things like Ghost Keels, Maliceptors, Mutilith Vortex Beasts, go on. And then being able to take, 10 Wolfen, which, maybe they were a little undercosted.
Yes.
It was 160 for 10. I'm like, you know what? I'll just fling 160 points at a Mutilith Vortex Beast and throw 40 damage to attacks with +1 to wound. That solves my problem. So I was like, yep, bam, Space Wolf player.
Right.
And I played Space Wolves for a while for 10th. And then once Team USA I kind of flip-flopped between them and Gene Stealer Colt for a bit. And then once the Team USA WTC stuff, we just kind of experimented with everything. And then once the Codex hit, we kind of found a groove with liking them more than like Blood Angels. Blood Angels had just been gotten like their points cut. So we're like, oh, maybe are we looking at Blood Angels? But as we saw with lots of teams, everyone kind of gravitated to Space Wolves as their go-to.
Right. And I'm curious, Space Wolves, you just talked about Blood Angels. What do you think drew you to Space Wolves and what made them stand out as the Space Marine army that you all took to WTC this year?
So for me personally, between Blood Angels and Space Wolves, Blood Angels do hit very hard as far as Marines go, but your really only viable build is like Liberator Assault Group. The problem with Liberator Assault Group is like it has a strat for advance and charge and a strat for fallback and charge, but that's kind of like the end of what the detachment does. You have no interaction on your opponent's turn. You have 0 interaction on your opponent's turn. You don't have any fight on death. You don't have any reactive moves. You don't have any defensive strats outside of like Armor of Contempt. So it's very kind of straightforward, very kind of solved. And then even then, it's also just a very fragile army. Yeah. So, good players who could mitigate what Blood Angels are trying to do, layering heroics. Like, you have no really way to play around people interrupting into you if they just have 2 CP. You're like, I don't have any cool interactions here. I just kind of move and charge. While Space Wolves had so many layering of different ways you could play them. And they're kind of like a multi-tool, and you could tech into different builds that solve different problems in the meta.
Wow.
While like Blood Angels are just kind of like blunt force. While like
Space Wolves are cooler, is what I'm
yes.
hearing.
And how much did the Iron Fist Predator help into deciding on that?
It was definitely important because having just 1 to 2 fire pieces is a big deal. That's like another thing with Blood Angels. Blood Angels don't really have a lot of gun support because it's like Vindicators, but then Vindicators are Oath Hogs, and a very big thing in Space Marine list building is building around Oaths and Oath redundancy. So you don't want units that are going to draw Oaths away to be able to function. So the Iron Priest was definitely a big bonus because it's super helpful. I only took the 1, but generally that's enough to be like, my opponent is now not going to deploy their tank in the open.
Yeah.
And just like buying that space for you itself is like value.
Yeah, we're super jealous of anyone who got to take that to a tournament because they nerfed it before the book dropped, and everything I got to go to was that they weren't running the old version.
I'm a bit salty. I think it was way too heavy-handed. I think they should have, this is my little rant, I think they should have not let it work for one-shot weapons, like hunter-killer missiles.
Yeah.
But when you look at like the Iron Priest rule compared to a normal Tech Marine, there's like 2 data sheets where he's actually better. And in like 90% of cases, +1 to hit will net you more overall damage.
Wow.
I'm like, this is a cool, interesting thing. Like if you take a Repex, you're going to take a +1 to hit because, cool, you get 1 extra shot on like it. The rapid fire is only valuable on a vehicle platform with multiple low volume guns. So I thought like, oh, he fills a cool niche. You take a Tech Marine on like things like Predator Annihilators, but you wouldn't want an Iron Priest on a Predator Destructor. Because it's like, okay, I get 1 extra shot on a 6-shot autocannon, or I could make my 6 shots hit on 2s. You're going to take the hit on 2s. So that's my little rant. I'm like, come on, guys. Now he sucks.
We were all lamenting it. But without further ado, Matt, you want to talk about the list that Alex brought to the event?
Yeah, sure. All right, so he was running your favorite detachment, Stormlance.
Stormlance, yes.
It's featuring RGZ and the Beastie Boys. So he had Arjac, Bjorn, Iron Priest, Combi Lieutenant Logan, Intercessor Squad, 5-man JPI, Infiltrators, always love that, 2 Predator Annihilators, Scout Squad, 2 6-man, and then 1 3-man of Thunderwolves, and then 2 5-man Terminators.
Yeah. Wow. Beef of a list. A lot of 4-pin wounds. Some amount, a splash of shooting, but it looks like you can just full send it to your opponent and disrespect them.
Yeah. So a big thing that kind of got touched on in like some of the previous conversations, as we know, is that teams is kind of a different beast when it comes to list building. And in like a lot of cases, you generally build the same lists, but armies definitely will have roles. So when you see a list, kind of like Olivier's, where it's like I'm taking this list because we needed a Night Answer in my team. I have 3 Iron Priests and 3 Annihilators, and I'm Gladius for XXYZ. For our team specifically, we had an abundance of kind of night, maybe not abundance, but we had our night counters. Like we had Chaos Cults, we had Host of Ascension. What my role more was tailored to was being able to play meta armies like Death Guard, Thousand Suns, armies like that, specifically potentially on their board. So this is where Stormlance comes into big plays because you're just so monstrously fast. If I get put on a light board against Death Guard, I can stage behind whatever ruining. If they take the light board, like I could stage behind most ruins anywhere, even in my deployment zone, and just be on their side of the board.
Wow.
So I was able to very reliably blunt things like Death Guard, blunt Thousand Suns, as well as, having just a melee pressure list in general does give you windows to push when it's available. But this list was definitely much more tailored into being a potential absorber for shooting armies.
Right.
And then pushing against other armies that generally don't have like a lot of trash to
Screen
disrupt
and
what and
push you
screen
back.
what the list is trying to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, the ability to go 21 inches in charge anytime you decide to is
Turn one.
pretty nice. Yeah.
I'm curious, how often did you find yourself just pedal to the metal, flooring it? Would you wait a couple turns on certain matchups? Would you get really aggressive early on, say into the Death Guard matchup where they've got 3 Death Shroud in reserve and you push it back as far as possible? Like, I'm curious about that. Like, what was your staging and aggression plan throughout in the different matchups?
Yeah, so generally I had like kind of a pattern of play. And a lot of it, and the reason why the JPI are there and the reason why like the 3-man wolf is there is I'm most of the time looking to go for either big turn 2 or big turn 3, a massive push. And the big thing that kind of maybe a lot of Space Wolves players will find is Space Wolves aren't really super killy. The army is mass strength 5.
Yep.
You could usually, if whatever detachment you're in, one unit could get Lance, one unit's getting Oaths. They might be both on the same thing depending on a hard target, but usually the other units are just kind of left to their own devices. And a unit like, Logan and Terminators without Oaths or some sort of +1 to wound is kind of mediocre damage.
Yeah, not much.
So if you're going to push, with a list like this, it's more about leveraging your durability and your just pressure and keeping them in more than actually like I'm tabling my opponent. I'm hitting them everywhere at once and killing them. Most smart players will see the threats and see the pressure and be like, I'm going to use Eldar Rangers to just be the guys in front of myself. I'm going to use these cheaper units or, position in certain ways where your pressure is harder, where a lot of times you're not really going in and actually killing a lot of useful things, but it's more about you now have to deal with all this, and you could realistically deal with maybe 1.5. And while you're dealing with that 1.5, you're not scoring, you can't afford to do tactical. You need all of your damage pieces coming out. And the whole time, I'm just sitting pretty on my 2 objectives because you just can't afford to even go after them.
Yeah, that's what I kind of tell people is Space Wolves don't punch up well, but they survive. It's most of your games and stuff like Knights, Big Demons, it's a grind game. Like you're just
absolutely
gonna live and just slow. Like Arjac and Logan will slowly grind through a big thing, but it's gonna take you 3 or 4 turns.
Exactly. Like I played Demons, I played a Shadow Legion Monster Mash, and it was very much just kind of that of just like I can kill a monster and a half, but your monsters have relatively low volume and not tons of damage, and I'm not going to take enough damage in response. And because I'm Stormlance, everything just cycles back in and out.
Right.
So that's kind of a big thing for me with Stormlance too, was when you look at a list like Gladius, like unless you're tailoring your list for a specific role and you just go down the line of strats and how much you use them. Because I was playtesting Gladius first.
Right.
Was like, okay, you have the reactive move. I have a reactive move. Mine's flat 6. You have +1 to wound. I have +1 to wound, albeit it's only on wolves. But like, unless you're really using it on like the one turn, you're using it on like a head taker unit or like Logan's unit. A lot of times you kind of want to use it on wolves. So you're not like really missing out. It's kind of like a side grade. You also get like a reroll charges in there. You look at like, oh, you have the Devastator Doctrine. Well, I can make something advance and shoot if I need it to.
Right.
A lot of the time you don't really need it to. Storm of Fire, like when you're just taking Predator Annihilators, I never really use Storm of Fire all that much, even in Gladius, because your CP is just so much more valuable on like putting guys in other doctrines or interrupting, etc. So like really the only strat I felt was missing was Fight on Death. Like that was basically it. And in a role where I'm kind of more playing against shooting armies and, monster armies and elite armies, like I'm not needed as much. So all of the strats and all the stuff I was doing in Gladius is kind of already there in Stormlance, but the -1 to hit and -1 to wound strat is just obnoxious.
Yes.
The flat advance really allows you to close gaps, and it's just it's insane. Like, so like I kind of have most of the same stuff, and the fact that everything advances and falls back and does that all the time is massive quality of life when you're an army that is hinging on its durability. Because how many times it's like you pop your Assault Doctrine and you have one turn where you could fall back and charge with everything. But after that, like you're spending those strats every time. Only one thing can do it. Most of my games, you have like Bjorn, 2 wolves that survived over here, Logan and half a Terminator squad, et cetera, et cetera. All this stuff is just cycling in and out and grinding your opponent, which like Gladius, you're more limited in. So for me, that's kind of why I drifted towards Stormlance and found it actually very fit very well.
Yeah, it also serves a fantastic purpose you touched on with teams. It can really bully strictly shooting armies and armies that don't have a lot of good answers to wolves. You mentioned Bjorn, you mentioned stratagems. Using stratagem in Stormlance, there's some amazing strats there. You also mentioned that wolves specifically don't have like a really high damage. It's really their durability. But I'm curious your inclusion of Bjorn, because in my experience, he does help the CP economy, but he doesn't really add a lot to damage. He kind of like is 170 points that's just sitting in mid board that doesn't really do much until like turn 3 or 4. And even then he's like, throwing a couple 3 damage melee attacks around. I'm curious, why did you decide to include him?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree. I think if you're not super CP hungry, you can afford not to take him. I generally have liked him. Like, I don't think he's like, that amazing. Like he's been great in games. And there's also games where I think he is generally kind of middle of the road if you're just looking at his profile. For me specifically, Stormlance is massively CP hungry. Being able to threaten the 21-inch immediately
on any given turn.
Like, if I get top of 1, I could 21-inch if I want to.
Wow.
And, just having that threat and having people know that I can, they have to deploy differently. They have to change their game plan. Stormlance is super hinges on being able to -1 to hit and -1 to wound in your opponent's turn, being able to flat 6 reactive in your opponent's turn, and save your CP for +1 to wound on your turn. You kind of need that. You need to make sure you have, AOC. Like there's so much that goes into it, like how much CP that you need. If you're in a melee matchup, you want to have interrupt available so that his CP is super valuable. And I was mostly using him as just a linebacker. So while everything runs up and everything's fighting and scrapping, he just kind of like bumbles around on my expansion or my weak side and just kind of like cleans up random things, stands on points and puts his OC there, throws out a Hellfrost shot.
Right.
And then generally, because, they have to eat, we're in this big attrition game of toughness. No one ever really goes after him because he's just too much. He's not like a direct threat to them because the wolves are in their throat. Logan's in the middle of their army. He's just kind of off on the side. And he just like, oh, my wolves, went into this tank, left it alive at 6. They fell back with it. They shoot at the wolves. 4 are alive. These 4 wolves want to drive deeper into my opponent. And then Bjorn just kind of waddles up, does the last 6 wounds to the tank and just exists.
Yeah.
Tags things and keeps them locked in combat.
Unlike Aiden, I love Bjorn. I put a video out last week talking about how great Bjorn is. I include him in every list. Just getting that CP, just not only to help you with strats, like you're saying, you can do the turn 1, but I have found that it really helps me with secondaries. Because now a lot of times I'll hold on to like Assassinate or Overwhelming or something like that through my opponent's turn. So they have to worry about me having that card their whole turn because I don't need to discard it to get the CP.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because now you can discard at the end of your opponent's turn. So I just make them worry their whole turn if I'm going to keep Assassinate or Overwhelming, and now they have to decide if they want to push something out.
Yeah. We get a question from the chat. Sean Joyner says, how do you like wolves into Necrons?
So generally, it's pretty good. Necrons most of the time don't have the damage to get through you unless they just get super lucky. I played Necrons in WTC. I see warrior builds in like Awakened Dynasty potentially being a problem because you kind of have a volume issue. Like you have a lot of attacks, but not like warrior a lot. But more elite, the big thing with Necrons, at least from my list, is Necrons are generally very elite. If they're taking like Star Shatter or like Doomsday Arcs, they have like 1 trash unit of Flayed Ones. And this is I kind of got tangented, but like I have like a play pattern where, you kill their like couple little skirmishy move blocky pieces and scoring pieces, open up the board, and then you just slap them with your entire army all at once and tag and kill as much as you can. And like, a DDA has the potential to kill an entire wolf squad. It shouldn't, dice be dice, but it's like, it's going to get like 8 shots. It's going to hit like, 6. It's going to wound you like 5 times and you have 4 up invulns. It might kill 2. It might kill 3. It might kill 1.
Right.
But generally you could plow through all of their front line. And then if all of their left was like some guns, or if you tag, God forbid, you tag a DDA or even kill it. The moment you kill a DDA and all they have is like the king and 1 DDA, the rest of the Necrons just don't hurt you.
Right.
And Necrons don't fall back and do anything. Your entire army falls back and does stuff. So you can just kind of ignore the race, keep them locked in combat with Bjorn for all eternity, and then kill everything else, stand on points, and that's generally how I've found they kind of play.
Yeah.
I think this kind of leads well into kind of the play pattern, because that's like perfect. Generally, that's what the JPI are there, and the 3-mana rolls are for. So turn 1, I want the ability to fly out and go kill my opponent's 10 Colossus on their expansion, their Eldar Rangers, their Poxwalkers, stuff like that. I'm trying to kill them like top of 1 and then top of 2, and aggressively stage my army. And I don't even have to stage that aggressively because I can close that gap so quickly. But just stage in a safe location where once I clear off my opponent's screens, I'm looking for like the top of 3 or bottom 2 all in turn, where everything that connects is connecting deep into my opponent, and it has the ability to tag things, hit actual units. The biggest weakness for a list with heavy Thunderwolf Cav and stuff like this is if your opponent just has a bunch of bullshit that they could be like, here's my 50-point rando unit that just stands in between 2 ruins, and now your wolves can't go anywhere.
Right. Yep.
So that's why like those early game skirmish pieces are so important, and why Bjorn's important, because you want to bank up the CP turn 1, potentially turn 2, and then leverage a rapid ingress into big push, or big push followed by a rapid ingress response on that turn 2 or turn 3, where everything's going all at once, and you have specifically CP saved for a flat 6 reactive and -1 to hit and -1 to wound. Because those combined is what disrupts your opponent's response, makes them not be able to like answer you in the optimal way that they want to, and then everything that survives is just slamming back in. And if your opponent just hard flops, the game's over.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the nice thing about teams is you can be like, look at Lennon, don't put me into all trash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Generally, this list is also kind of weak into other melee pressure lists, simply because, I don't like, I'm only really good into one target, and most of the time I'm just trying to leverage my durability against like shooting armies and tagging things, while like, a giant Death Company unit or some World Leader unit going into T-Wolf Cav kind of just kills them, versus a -1 to hit, -1 to wound Thunderwolf squad might take like a whole shooting army to kill.
Wow. Yeah, because your one defensive strat is shooting only.
Yeah, and like interrupts aren't as great because you can't lance, you won't have oaths generally against a target.
Not 3 damage usually on the
and it's just like, here's my like 20 attacks. I'm gonna hit 15. I'm gonna wound you like 10 times. You use some defensive strat or whatever. I'm hardly killing anything, and they're just dying anyways.
Right.
So like that's where kind of Gladius fills that role a little better, where you could fight on death. You're more better at like the melee versus melee. Well, like for me, like going against the other melee pressure lists like Bile and World Eaters and like Blood Angels was actually kind of like less favored for me, because I'm more about just like, I'm going to be on your side of the board and pressure you, while melee armies can interrupt into me and heroic. Like I can't really stop like a Dante squad from just sitting behind a unit that the wolves want to charge and then just heroicing me. Like I don't have like the trash to disrupt that really. So
yeah, absolutely good point. Dace has got a good question, which is what I'm thinking. What about singles? How do you adapt this to singles? It sounds like you might lean towards Gladius. I'm just curious, what would you take if you had to go to a singles GT?
If I had to play singles, I do think Gladius maybe just ekes out, just because, especially in singles, most of them are like GW terrain. Most people play with like GW terrain. GW terrain definitely favors having more guns, like a mixed army, where you have like these tanks and ballistuses holding these firing lanes, because Staging isn't really great on GW. There's not a lot of places to hide, so it favors more of that balanced like combined arms style, which Gladius is like tailor made for. But I definitely don't think like Stormlance is just not viable. Like I think you still go more into like gun platforms, just to like assist you with how that GW is. You maybe go less into like the melee pressure,
Right.
but just the strats are just so good in Stormlance
They're
that
amazing. Yeah.
Moving 20 inch does help with like the kind of rough staging GW gives you.
Yeah. Follow up. I'm curious now that the Iron Priest is no longer incredible. For everyone that doesn't know, the Iron Priest got FAQ'd on release. However, WTC did have a rules cutoff before the nerf, so they played with the Codex Iron Priest, where you rapid fired all of the weapons. Now, Iron Priest not so good, except for Iron Storm. I'm still loving it in there. What type of shooting do you take in Gladius, in Stormlance? Where would you pivot?
That is a very tough question, and I don't think there's an actual like good answer. That's like the Space Marine problem is if you're not like an army that has some sort of Black Templar repex, the options all come with different pros and cons. So you can take Lancers, and Lancers are good at kind of just like holding firing lanes on GW, but Lancers are also very singly focused. So people love and hate Lancers. There's people who like taking them. There's people who are just like, you play a matchup where they just don't have juicy tanks. They're worthless. You shoot at something with a 4-pin bow and it just makes the 4-pin bow and it does nothing. You could take Vindicators, which are kind of like the more common one that people take, but they're kind of more short ranged. They're Oath Hogs, which is a big thing because Space Wolves don't have a lot of Oath individuality unless you kind of go the more Gladius build where you could take like, Ragnar, maybe like a Headtaker squad with like a battle leader, stuff like that, where like Stormlance, your Thunderwolf need the Oaths. Like
they do.
They
really
it.
do.
So when you're taking Vindicators, your Vindicators don't really do that well without Oaths. And then the kind of weird in between is like Repexes, which like you have the 2 big shots and you have a bunch of crap shots. So they kind of like do 2 roles, but then they're really, really bad at killing like just power armor infantry. Yes. It's just a bunch of AP0 and AP1 and then 2 big shots. And if you don't oath them, like a 1 Repex might kill like 3 Marines, but it'll just like eviscerate an elf army. So like it's just kind of tailoring to maybe how you want to play them if you're in Gladius versus Stormlance. I feel like with Stormlance, you want to shift towards the more individual gun platforms like Lancers, just because Oaths is much more valuable to you.
Right.
Well, in Gladius, you kind of can make do with different variations of units where you could afford to, Storma firing a Repex it makes it super good now. And it versus, you don't really have that in Stormlance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on your Terminator squads, I notice you don't run the axe on your sergeant. You like them better with shield?
Yeah, so kind of like what we were talking about earlier, for me, the Wolves are getting the Oaths. They're just getting the Oaths. Or sometimes, depending on what the Wolves are charging, the Annihilator is getting the Oaths. Generally, the Terminators were there just to be in my opponent's face, cram them up. The Wolves are generally the opponent's higher priority because they tend to do more damage. They can always fall back and charge. They're super fast. Sometimes I'll just eat some desperate escapes and just jump over you and now get onto your home objective.
Right.
So generally they're taking the brunt of the force and they're not getting Oaths. The axe, when you don't have Oaths, kind of just does nothing. I just never could get it to do damage. It's like, 3 attacks, you hit 2 times, you wound once or twice, whoop-de-doo. But much more often, I had times where the extra wound would have either kept the character alive or stopped like a battle shock needing, or so many more times the leveraging of the durability means more than the random like 2 extra damage I would get from the guy having the axe. And keeping Arjac alive, like, a lot of melee characters are damage 3. If you have the squad leader and Arjac left alive, if you fail 3 saves, now they're all dead, versus if you fail 3, that's an Arjac alive at 3. And Arjac surviving at 3 into like some monster character that
Mm-hmm.
just almost killed your unit now just dies. And now you have an Arjac who doesn't need a battle shock that can go fall back and run off somewhere. So to me, that was much more valuable than the probably not even getting extra damage out of the X.
Yeah, makes sense.
That does make sense. And so, of this list, I'm curious not only about what's in it, but what's not in it. Sean's got a good question, and I'm following up with this. We see Blood Claws and Ragnar. Like, there's pretty much only, I saw some other lists that took Blood Claws and Ragnar. I'm curious if you think they're good in Stormlance, if you chose Terminators and Thunderwolf over them. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great unit. It's more kind of, I think like, Blood Claws and Ragnar, at least 10 is probably an auto take in any like singles list. It was more about just like, I didn't really have the points. Everything in this list is like crafted with a role in mind.
Right.
And there is kind of a cumbersome unit. It's very hard to hide. It definitely is going to hog your oaths. You don't have any like strat support in Stormlance for it, so you can't give it Lance, which is actually a very important thing. Winning on 5s rerolling is a lot different than 6s rerolling. So the Stormlance was definitely built much more to be like the melee pressure, close the gap on these shooting armies, play on light terrain. While like if you're running 20 Blood Claws, you do not want light terrain. You just don't want it. Like you playing knights, you don't want 20 man of Blood Claws. Things like the intercessors and the infiltrators, their role was kind of this interchangeable tech piece where, tunnel nids were a thing. People kind of figured out last second that tunnel nids wasn't as good as everyone thought it was, but there was a massive amount of time where every Tyranid player was running tunnel nids, and it was like the big new thing. And then you also have Death Guard, Death Shroud out there. So the intercessors and the infiltrators are these little interchangeable dudes where, depending on the matchup, I swap which one is the backline holder versus the expansion frontline holder. So if I'm playing like a matchup that just like doesn't have any real deep striking, infiltrators just hold and they screen my backline for all time. Intercessors kind of take the role of I'm going to exist and run to my expansion. A big thing is like when I'm pressuring someone a ton, they don't really have time to go after 5 random intercessors. Now they get to sticky my expansion and they go run up forward. They have assault, which means they're always advancing and shooting, and they're always advancing and charging. And you'd kind of be surprised how much like supporting damage an intercessor squad can do between their 20 bolter shots and a crack grenade and like a grenade that they throw and a power fist on the squad leader.
Yeah. One thing that just to piggyback off of that I thought is a kind of a hard thing to play around for deep striking armies is a 12-inch deep strike denial with a reactive move. You think you have this 12-inch deep strike denial. Okay, how do you answer that as an all deep strike army? Like Death Watch, Tunnel Nids. Well, you just rapid ingress and run up to them and kill them, and then you can just do whatever you want. But in Stormlance and Beastslayer and sometimes Gladius, it actually gets really hard to deal with that 12-inch deep strike denial now because you can't just run up onto them. And it really disrupts the game plan of a lot of deep strike armies, which are very present. Death Shroud, Death Guard, Tunnel Nids. I mean, you name it. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
But then the other things that you chose to not include, I don't see any wolf in here.
I, unfortunately, generally don't like Wolfen. I have found, and many others have found, that the Hammer Wolfen kind of don't do anything you want them to. They're an entirely singly focused unit, which means they're only ever going to do anything to a vehicle or a monster. Even then, they almost don't even do it. Like, 10 attacks, you're like towing that line of like, if I just roll slightly bad, this unit does like no damage to like the thing that I need it to be doing damage to. I actually like Axewolfen better in almost every case. They have sustained hits. You pair that with the reroll ones, they have more attacks. So generally, what you want from Wolfen, right? If you're thinking about what their role is, they're like skirmishers. They run up and they're the thing that goes and kills 5 Marines or kind of other similarly priced things. You're not expecting like your kind of fast little tradey piece. The problem therein with Wolfen lies with you want them to be a skirmish, like for Axe Wolfen specifically. Like you want them to be your skirmishers because they're perfect trade pieces. They're amazing trade pieces. But in the role of a skirmisher, that generally means you're running out and killing trash where you don't want to go send anything real. When you're doing that, you're not near characters. And the problem is if you have 5 Axe Wolfen going to go kill 5 intercessors off a flank, if one intercessor survives, or you need to try and kill this, if there's a single rhino that you just can't afford to go after, this Wolfen unit is just like useless. Because if you can't kill this rhino, which you probably won't, or if you leave one model alive out of some unit, because they throw 15 attacks, sustained, reroll ones, they're pretty good, but you're like kind of towing that line of like maybe you leave 1 or 2 cultists alive. The moment they leave that 1 or 2 cultists alive, you've done nothing with them. They've wasted their value. You haven't denied the point. And it's kind of they want this role, but they're kind of bad in both roles. Where like the Hammer Wolfen aren't really tough. They're just 2 wound Marines. Like the 4-up invuln's kind of superfluous because they're not shooting anti-tank stuff at them. They're just shooting like heavy bolters and shuriken cannons, and they just die. And then they kind of don't have enough. Like you play a matchup that doesn't have monsters that want to be in your face. 5 Hammer Wolfen will kill 2 orcs in the wall. Like they'll kill 2 boys. Like you have 10 attacks. You're gonna hit 7 times. You're gonna wound them on 4s. You're gonna wound them 4 times. They have a 5-up invuln. They make 1 or 2. You kill 2 orc boys, and then you die. Like so, they're too singly minded to kind of worth spending the 100 points on. And then the Axe Wolfen are great for what they want to do, but then their rule punishes you for using them for what their role is supposed to be.
Man, that hurts my soul, but it has truth to it. I understand where you're coming from. In playtesting with Shield Wolfen, I found that they don't really have a role that they do really well that we need.
The only time I had Shield Wolfen to good is so I was running a 10-man. I was in an attachment that could give them sustained, and they had Oath. Anytime they didn't have all that going for them, they just didn't kill what I needed them to kill.
Yeah. And I love Wolfen. When I ran 30 Wolfen in a Gladius 30 Wolfen list, so I'll run them.
Wow. Fascinating. Matt, do you want to take this next question from the chat?
Sure. Yeah, Nub is asking about Headtakers.
All right. I think the best thing about Headtakers is the Wolfguard battle leader, not the Headtakers. I think Headtakers are just generally bad in many cases, especially in the meta and especially compared to alternatives. I think when you compare point for point, their rule is kind of worthless. Like their rule they don't have a datasheet rule. Just forget that. Unless you're playing like big knights and you're like, haha, I've deployed them here and that's the big knight. You have to step forward.
Yeah.
They're kind of just blade guard. But when you look at their points and their weapon profile and you compare them to Wolfguard Terminators, which move 1 inch slower, but have the same profile, they have a 2-up, they have 4 wounds, which is a very big deal. It's not 1 more wound. A lot of times it's double based on math breakpoints. Being a 3 wound in infantry in this meta is just not where you want to be. Being strength 5 is not where you want to be. I will say that if I took Headtakers, I would take them in Gladius, and I would probably just run double sword unit with a battle leader with Honor Vehement. And that unit will slam. And it'll do it at not a high price. You just take 3 of them with a battle leader with Honor Vehement, and that unit will trade massively up, and it will slam something at a pretty decent price point. But I generally think if you're trying to take Headtakers, you just take Wolfguard Terminators for those points because they're more point efficient. They do the same amount of damage. They're like quadruple the toughness. And yeah, it's just more of a problem. Like, if battle leaders could attach to Blade Guard, you'd probably put them on Blade Guard.
Ooh,
So the Headtakers' best rule is that they allow battle leaders to attach to them because battle leaders are quite good.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, I think that's what we've been finding in our playtesting. We've playtested a lot of different games, a lot of different detachments. They do well in specific detachments that buff them. Beast Slayer, Gladius, a couple others, Hunter maybe. But in a lot of other things, Stormlance, Bold even. I mean, Bold, they did okay. Almost, you need to stack a lot of buffs on them for them to be good, is what we're finding. Yeah. And then even then, they're 3-1 Marines that fold like paper compared to Terminators and compared to Thunderwolf Cav that can stick around to significantly heavy shooting. These things, like, I don't know, you throw 3 out there and they die on whatever they don't kill because they didn't exactly swing up. Or unfortunately, Headtakers we've found have not been doing it for us.
Yeah, and like, what we talked about earlier is Space Wolves as a faction generally are very good at leveraging their durability, and like we talked about, it's just lots of strength 5, not a lot of oath reliant independence, which generally means you're not a good trade army. You're not a good I'm gonna just table you army. You're more of an army of positioning and leveraging your durability and things like reactives to maximize what units you have. And Headtakers don't, like, when you have a Headtaker and a Wolfguard Terminator, the Wolfguard Terminators fit that role perfectly. They hit decently. They're very tough. They're faster than your average Terminator, so they kind of slot in there. If I did take Headtakers, like, I would probably just run 3-man double weapons and use them as just like, 18 attacks is a lot. If you could stack like a buff, like a +1 to wound, or lethal hits or reroll hits, all of a sudden that unit is like pretty decent little trade piece. Like, it's like 80. Like, I can't even remember how many points there are. Like 90 points.
Yeah, 85 for 3.
Yeah, just run up, get some free wolves to go screen a corner, and just like hit something for 18 attacks. They're really good at just trading into medium stuff. But I wouldn't take them with like shields and a 6-man and expect them to outperform Wolfguard Terminators, where they just won't.
Yeah.
Because I've found in pretty much every event I've gone to, people spend 5 turns bitching about how hard the Terminators are to kill.
Yep.
Have you tried 10-man Terminators, the big brick?
I have not. I personally, so this is kind of like the thing I enjoyed with my list, and like I like the 10-man Terminators. If you like it, keep playing it. If it fits into your list, because I'm very aggressive with my list. I'm not playing backs and forces. I drive Logan into my opponent's army along with like Arjac and along with my wolves. So he's not like, deep upping, downing around, trying to be like cute with his aura. He is like driving deep into the middle of my opponent's army where all the wolves are, where they want to fall back, they want to interrupt, they want to use their offensive strat and shooting. And if he's just like driving into their home and like in the middle of the board, that massively disrupts what defensive my opponents can use and what offensive strats, and like fallback shoot and charge is now 2 CP like that. It mattered a lot in my games against like Votan, where now they don't have enough for sustained hits 2, or they have to choose between falling back and shooting a land fort or giving a unit sustained hits 2 or giving a unit +1/+2 AP. If they don't give the extra AP to Berserkers, I Armor of Contempt. So now they actually like can't just like dump all their efficiency, and throwing a wrench into their efficiency while banking your CP for -1 to hit and -1 to wound and reactive moves is like the dam that holds back being tabled for 1.5 turns, which is what keeps you in the game long enough to just like, oh, you just haven't left your deployment zone now.
Yes.
And I have got
5 on primary the whole game. Yeah.
Because like you just need that extra turn of surviving. Like you just need to take that one less damage turn, keep your units alive on the pivotal clapback turn. And if you mitigate that clapback turn, your Stormlance, fall back, going again, seal the deal.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. I find the 10-man will only work in Stormlance or Gladius where you can fall back, because they do have the punch-up problem. Any other attachment, you get stuck.
Please don't run it in Beast Slayer. I know it's cool. I have seen it in play. It's just...
Why?
You move 6. You need advance and charge on it. You need to fall back and do stuff. The smart players will take a Rhino and charge you on the left side and some other unit and charge you on the right, and your Terminators aren't going to kill the Rhino, and now you're stuck in combat with a Rhino. and they're just going to kill everything else around you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I've been running it, and I've been like, I deep strike it turn 1, and a lot of times I can drop it on a lot of these GW layouts up where it can't really be seen, where I can run it onto my opponent's expansion turn 2. And
Yeah.
that
And then,
a lot of people don't
Yeah.
deploy to be able to get to your expansion, so now they have a primary problem starting from the beginning of the game.
you could reactive move them, fight on death in Gladius.
Wow. So I'm curious, out of all of the Space Wolf, greetings.
From
Out of
Peru,
all the Space Wolf specific detachments, all the sagas, which one would you take?
That's a hard question. Like gun to your head, have to take a saga. Because I generally think Gladius and Stormlance just fit Wolves better.
Right.
The problem with Beast Slayer is generally Beast Slayer is better. It has the best rules.
Yes.
But I think specifically for GW and why we saw a lot of Beast Slayer on teams is it's much better in WTC to control your layouts and control your pairings. So if you're playing Beast Slayer in a world where you can go and hunt knights on terrain where you could hide and where you could just stage your unit assuming that a giant knight is going to have to come up and you just go and charge the knight is much different than like going to a singles GW event where, you play on layout 6, you play on layout 4, you play on layout 2, where like you have like one ruin that's like 2 inches out of your deployment zone, and then the sides are just open to shooting, and you don't really have anywhere more forward to stage. When you just move 6 inches or 7, if you actually measure the distance between the wall and your opponent's expansion, if they just touch the back end, it will generally be 17 to 21 inches.
Yeah.
Which means if you move 6, you're not threatening them at all. They could just sit back with a tank and just shoot, just sit there, and you don't really have an answer there. Like I generally think if you're playing a mostly melee army on GW, you need advance and charge. You just need it. It's an unfortunate fact that it just has to exist, because if you just move 6 and you're too predictable, your opponent can just kite you all game and you're never going to get anywhere.
Right. That makes sense.
Bold has advance and charge. So if I had to take a saga on GW terrain and singles, I'll probably start with Bold and then experiment with kind of what works. Because the detachment rule kind of only in strats really only applying to character units gets a little finicky, because outside of like, Arjac and Logan and like a battle leader, you generally don't want a lot of more characters. Space Marines are elite. And the more every time you spend a character, you're basically that's a one less unit you're taking. So now if you're just cutting the amount of units you have, you're becoming much and much less tradey. Bold isn't like super fast, so it's not like Space Wolves where you're just like, okay, I have less units, but all my units are on your side of the board. GW is much more kind of tradey, force opponents out. So the more and more you have to play the game of like how many characters do you take versus how much do you,
Yeah, because I think Bold has the best stratagems in the book, even though the army.
The strats are amazing in Bold.
The -1 damage in shooting, the heroic intervention without them charging, basically. Like it's got one where you can choose sustained or lethal on a unit. You can give a unit rerolls, so basically a second oath, advance in charge, and then the other one's like make a unit that doesn't have a character that's like
a character, which is weird.
The big thing right there, like we talk about this so much, especially with Space Marines, is oath independence is big. So when you have battle leader in this character unit, Arjac over here, and then Logan's unit going in with oaths, and you have a strat to reroll hits, suddenly everything is kind of operating at basically maximum efficiency. You have the coveted advance and charge, which you just kind of like need on GW terrain to close gaps. It's the most flexible out of all the sagas, which in singles, that's kind of where flexibility shines. So that's why I think we saw so much Beast Slayer in teams.
It just misses the Lance strat. That's the only thing.
Also, that stand back up combi lieutenant is a nightmare to deal with. It doesn't matter what army you are. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, one of my main first builds in early 10th was Dark Angels Unforgiven, which was a weird pick, But at the time, I kind of saw like you had the 2-up lieutenant, and back when they had like Deathwing command squads and stuff, I took fixed a lot because established locus used to give you 3 for
Oh
the
my
middle, and when
god.
you have a rat combi lieutenant pushing the button for 3 points every turn,
I
and then you have
hate
like
that.
an Inceptor squad to get you a 4-pointer, you can set like this floor of secondaries of like, if I take like cleanse or engage in that secondary, I'm getting like 25 out of, or 30 secondary, regardless of what you do.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Wow.
very
That is-
powerful that character can
That
be.
is so funny. I did not expect Bold. I mean, I've heard Beast Slayer is like the go-to for everyone. I think people are sleeping on Hunter, but I did not expect Bold.
Yeah, I think it's just like a GW train singlesism because it is the most flexible, and then
Right.
Beast Slayer, like we saw it just so much in teams because it is very like, I want to kill monsters and vehicles and characters, and I move 6, and I'm going to. It could be very punishing. You can't fall back and do anything. I think a skilled player who could leverage the toughness and like playing the game in a way that kind of forces your opponent into you, Beast Slayer can be better. But if you were just like someone trying to get into break into Wolves and just test the flexibility, and you wanted to play a Saga instead of Gladius because Gladius can get boring, I think Bold kind of gives you like all of the little tools to like set up just a good game plan.
Yeah.
And like I do think the Hunter can be very good, but the problem just lies in the Space Marines are elite.
Yep.
And it forcing you to have to throw 2 things into one thing to get rules is
kind of a challenge.
rough.
Yeah.
And then Bold also has like one of the easiest sagas to complete because it's just like kill 2 things and hold your expansion once and your saga's done.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm taking Saga of the Gladius de Nova. So
Saga of the Gladius. Oh man, it's the Gladius is just a black hole. It is such a well-run detachment.
it's just versatile. Yeah, it just does a little bit of everything you need.
It really
Exactly.
does.
And I think like, it keeps getting reiterated, but like you're playing singles on GW terrain, it just pushes you to combined arms. You need some tanks,
Right.
you need some melee, and you need speed and like flexibility. So like when you take 2 ballistices and 2 vindicators, and then the other half is like melee who want a reactive and want fight on death, Gladius supports all of that. While like you run Beast Slayer, you have no real like kind of like shooting support. So now your GW train on like these worse, more light layouts gets rougher. You can't close these gaps as well on GW train. So you kind of just like get railroaded into it if you really want to play like with your best possible adapting to your meta.
Yeah. You mentioned reactive moves a bit. I'm curious, how did you use reactive moves? Obviously, well, I'll let you answer. Like, what were the best ways that you use reactive moves?
I mean, it changes matchup to matchup. There's just such a powerful rule, especially flat 6 is just insane that, depending on just where your opponent is, you go on your big push turn, you're fighting, your opponent has to fall back from you here, or they have to move here, or your opponent draws area denial, and to draw area denial, they have to go within 9. And a lot of times it's like, okay, now, especially like with WTC terrain where you have like these L's and they're a lot more kind of centralized. It's like, all right, now Arjac's behind a wall. So now already my next turn, I have a full strength Arjac unit that's going back into you. So that alone is like massive. If that reactive move just fully saves a unit or fully hides a unit, that alone is like, now you might not even kill these wolves. Like already it's a question if you could kill enough wolves. Now you're already not going to kill an entire Wolfguard Terminator squad at full strength. And it's going straight back into you.
Yeah.
Adaptive like move blocking. So, someone falls back and they want to go charge somewhere else or move somewhere else. They move in front of that unit that now wants to move. WTC definitely has a lot more choke points. So you could go and move into that choke point. It's blessing and a curse because it's like we talked about, like it's really easy to block wolves. So that's a big thing good players will do against the wolves. It's just block them so they can't go anywhere. You could do that to other people too. And then like also reactive moving, like I have 6 wolves, 4 of them make it behind this ruin, 2 of them are in the open. I pop -1 to hit and wound. Your first Doomsday Arc kills 2. now nothing in your army can see the remaining that are behind
Right.
the wall.
Yeah.
So you could like,
yeah.
you know, you could chunk 2 of the models, but like no one unit is generally going to one activation them, and then you just pull away. So then after however many activations kills enough to hide the rest are hidden.
Yeah. So when we first saw all the data sheets, we kind of did a tier list. One thing that stood out to me, Arjac was kind of a sleeper at the beginning, but Matt, you started to pick up on him being an absolute unit in the combined with the Wolfguard Terminators, and now we're seeing him everywhere. And I just am really impressed every time I put him on the table.
Yeah, I was beating the drum for him from the beginning. Yeah, I love Arjac.
He does so much work.
For sure. You might hear some rumors whispering on the winds out there that in Team USA, someone might have said Arjac was really good, and that like I was like, no, I don't think Arjac's good. Just that's a lie. That's slander.
What?
That's slander. Do not believe them. I definitely saw Arjac right off the bat, and I am the first person to have discovered him on Team USA. Don't accept any other
Oh my god!
any other story from
This is
anyone
drama.
like John or anything. Just to ignore them. I definitely found Arjac and innovated Arjac. And yes, he was definitely kind of on paper. You didn't like see a lot, but the big thing is just like once people kind of learned Space Wolves are more about leveraging durability than damage.
Right.
That's kind of the trigger that leads. Okay, now we're leveraging durability. We're taking Terminators because a lot of people. I think the big thing was people didn't really see the Terminators at first.
As the durability. They saw
Terminators are just like, okay, they're strength 5. They suck. They don't have power fists anymore. They're just kind of regular Terminators. But it's like, you know what? 4 wounds. They're all being 4 wounds. -1 to wound is actually kind of crazy when there's also other durable things like wolves at you. It all adds up. Like none of them are singularly durable, but they're all more durable than they should be, just barely.
Yep.
So when there's an army of it, it all adds up. And then when you have surviving, you really want useful and valuable characters that do the surviving. And Arjac is like the perfect oath efficient survivor where this happened multiple times in testing, you know, against like Tyranids, where the Tyranids throw their 3 wound monster character into the Wolfguard because like they couldn't kill all of them. And oops, I killed, you know, left the squad leader alive at 1 wound because he ate 3 damage, or Arjac survives at 3 wounds because the Terminators just tanked barely enough. Now I'm rerolling hits, rerolling wounds, wounding you on 3s. You failed 4 saves. Your Hive like Tyrant is now just dead on your own turn. Now he's going to run over here and do 9 damage to this monster. And it's just like,
oh man, what
an interaction like that is such a crushing blow to an army. Where like losing a character on your turn, now taking damage from a unit that you thought was going to die and it's going to go kill another thing. And Arjac is just like, he fits in the durability. He doesn't do a ton of damage, but he does the grind damage because he's consistent.
He's very consistent.
You know, he's going to hit most of the time. He's going to wound everything in the game on 3s. So he's going to do 6 to 9 damage to basically everything ever. And that has a lot of value, especially in an army where everywhere else it like kind of doesn't do a lot of damage.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things in every game is when someone hits me with strength 16, 18, 20, and I have to remind them that those 2s don't wound on my Terminators.
Oh.
And fight on death is surprisingly relevant too.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially where you can get any buffs on it. Beast Slayer, Hunter. Sometimes even I look at the wording on the Gladius strat. If you do charge and someone has to take an interrupt or a fight first, you can still spend the Lance strat because it's not when you activate a unit. I think it just says in the fight phase, spend it. So you can still get Lance and +1 AP when you fight on death, which is, fighting death is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I've had games where he gets like precisioned out because he's so valuable to the unit that they just try to precision him instead of killing the Terminators. And then he's just like, all right, well, you killed them, but then he fought on death and he killed your unit anyways. And it's just like, you know.
I had that against Vanguard Nids. I drew Assassinate turn 1, and I moved him up. And then they drew Assassinate 2. They targeted him out, and then he fought on death and killed the Broodlord, and we both scored at Assassinate turn 1. It's like one of the funniest things ever.
Wow. Well, we've talked a lot about Wolves of the WTC on GW. We talked about, how you would adapt to singles. I'm curious, in this meta with a slightly nerfed Death Guard and Chaos Knights, Imperial Knights, where do you think Wolves rank in terms of armies? Are they top tier? Are they middle?
I think they're definitely in the upper pack of armies in the game. So they're probably hovering in like the A range, I would say. Like I don't think that they're like just going to be up there in super S tier. I think their biggest nerfs were like kind of they don't have a good shooting package now. So if
Right.
you're trying to go to a singles GW event, you're kind of on the back foot on a lot of those layouts where now you can't really hold these angles as well as everyone else. You're being forced out. You have to close those gaps. But they're probably, I would say, up there, probably one of the best of Space Marines, up there with Templars. Templars might be a little better,
Right.
simply because they have the repexes. I think if Black Templar repexes got hit or got a little nerfed, they would probably be maybe, if not a little better. So if you're playing Space Marines and you're playing Space Wolves, I think you're super happy. The Ragnar Bloodclaw unit is just super fun. That unit is just great. I do think, like, if you're someone who likes those Headtakers, the Honor Vehement Battle Leader, which is 3 double paired weapon guys, just slam.
Very good.
And then, you leverage reactive move. They backflip into an impulsor. That unit is actually very good. So there are, like, Headtakers do have a place, just a very specific one.
Thank you, Bro Boy. We talked about this in Stormlance, but just to reiterate, you took Stormlance, you got a lot of games with it. Lacking damage. How did you address that lack of damage?
That's kind of where the Annihilators came in. So generally, killing monsters in T10 plus things is mostly impossible outside the unit that's getting Lance, like the Wolf unit getting Lance. And even then, it's kind of swingy. Like,
right.
You have 24 attacks. Let's say you oath their unit. They're getting like 18 hits. Like, wounding on 5s, you're only wounding like a thing like on average like 6 times, 8 times if it's T10, which means like, okay, they spiked a couple saves. You do 9 out of the 16 on a Norn Emissary or, a Rogel Dorn. So like even with +1 to wound and even getting all your wolves in, which sometimes you still even lack the damage. So the Annihilators were very big into, if you're playing, like if it's a Dorn, you could at least just soften it or chunk it. If there's like a random Rhino off in the middle of nowhere, they'll just obliterate a Rhino. That's a very powerful thing for like Space Marines where you're all strength 5, because like a Rhino will probably not die to Wolfguard Terminators. So trying to have to deal with stuff like that was actually, the Annihilators filled that gap. Now, what you use to replace them, there's no good answer. There's pros and cons. Yeah.
I'm bringing the Space Wolf Knight right now.
Oh yeah, Canis Rex is good.
You got wolf stuff on him, right? I don't feel like
never go
cheating.
wrong with just putting a Canis Rex in your list for sure.
Right.
So I think it's going to be experimental. I think people are going to have to play around with what fire support they like, how the meta is going to shake out. Like there's going to be a data slate in early September. We know. So whenever like the rules come out, because like we saw that Knights and stuff got some points nerfs, but we don't know what the rules changes might be too. So people are all like, oh, the points nerfs aren't really enough for Chaos Knights and Death Guard. The rules might also be changing. Like, who knows? Like, they nerf Death Guard Deep Strike. They nerf PBC rules on top, or like they nerf like datasheet rules here and there, stuff, or like profiles. We don't really know the context behind that too. So, like, people can say like, oh, prep for Knights. Knights are still a problem, and then 2 weeks from now, Knights are obliterated from existence.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden, like, this is a Knight problem too. Knights and like Death Guard right now, unfortunately, are just like meta warping, because if there are big bads in a meta, they're such a skew that they have to warp every list around it, because now you have to assume you're going to play 4 big Knights and 4 Armigers, and there's going to be a Canis. So now, okay, I have to take anti-tank. I can't really build a list that has lots of cute random tradey pieces because they're not going to do anything in that matchup. I need to take meat and muscle, but then that makes you worse into just like the random Drukhari list of 27 units that's running around. So now your Lancer is just like, you have 2 Lancers that's like a quarter of your army of just dead points and dead weight. that's why Host of Ascension is so good right now. It's like, here's my Lancers for Knights. I literally can't even shoot these because I'm going to kill 2 models and then you're going to leave the board. So they are functionally worthless models. You have wasted a quarter of your army.
Yeah.
So I would say we just have to wait till the data slate, see how the meta shakes out, and then experiment with what units, like maybe Vindicators are good because they're the middle ground. They'll kill a Knight. They'll kill like infantry units. If Knights and DG go away, maybe you don't need those Lancers and you could afford to go run just more melee, because if there's less T10 in the game and there's less gun lines, you now open up the ability to run more like melee units and
Wolfen, Headtakers.
Yeah, like Axe Wolfen, Headtakers, stuff like that. So it's kind of a cop-out answer, but every time you're in that moment right before a data slate, you're in that weird limbo zone of like, you could build a list for right now, and right now it's Knights and Death Guard, probably still. So you probably still want to just run like Gladius with, 2 Ballistis, 2 Lancers, and just the good stuff. But I mean, who knows? Hopefully we get some cool changes. And then that might just like open up a bunch more builds. Like Bold becomes a lot better when there's not an army of T10 against you.
Right.
And your strength 5 can be leveraged a lot more in terms of lethality.
Yeah.
All right. Well, going a little over an hour now. So any last thoughts from chat or questions or anything you guys want to touch on before we get out of here?
We're grateful to have you on, Alex. It was a
absolutely.
fantastic interview. I learned a lot. I love Stormlance. It's my home detachment, so I'm happy to see that you took it to good success this year.
Yeah, I mean, I had this epiphany. As we know, like John Lennon is always a flag carrier. He loves his Stormlance his Stormlance Ultramarines. And I was just like, you know what? Try Stormlance. And as I started playing Stormlance, all these strats and all the stuff I was doing in Stormlance, I'm like, this is all just the stuff I was doing in Gladius anyways.
But better.
Like,
yeah.
I have the flat 6 reactive, which is always flat 6. I have the +1 to wound on like the unit that needs it. I can advance and shoot a unit like if I need to. But I'm always advancing, I'm always charging, I'm always fallbacking, I'm always charging. And then you just get the little sprinkling of, now I could be like the fastest army in the game, and I can have like the most obnoxious strat of 1 CP, flat -1 to hit, flat -1 to wound.
It's so annoying. It's not like your strength is higher, it's just all the time.
It's just, I mean, I had a game, like generally I'm good into Eldar. Like Eldar have like 2 or 3 major damage pieces and just a bunch of trash. And if I could just throw everything at them at once, it requires all of their damage pieces all at once to come out to kill like 1 wolf squad. But then the -1 to hit and -1 to wound is like really brutal. And like, there's a fateful game at WTC where I was executing the game plan. Everything went in, everything's in his face, threatening his deployment zone. And I had like 1 6-man wolf squad on the flank. And it's like, all right, Fire Dragons come out, Dark Reapers come out, Lickus comes out. Lickus shoots into -1 to wound. He's wounding them on 6s. So like no real damage, but it unlocks the crit 5s. Fire Dragons run out with crit 5 sustain. They don't have rerolls against mounted. So it's like, here's my 10 shots hitting on 4s with sustained. Here's my like 8 hits. I'm wounding you on 4s. Here's my like 4 wounds. I made all 4 of my invulns. I took 0 damage from your Fire Dragons. All right, here's my 10 Dark Reapers. I mean, they hit on 3s, but like, here's my 7 hits with my 10 shots, wounding you on 4s. Here's my, I slightly lower rolled. Here's 3 wounds. Oh, look, I failed 1 save. You've now shot your entire army at this unit, and I've lost 0 models.
Yeah.
You just lose.
Wait, did that happen at WCC?
Yes, I got shot by a whole army, lost 0 wolves.
Oh my god.
And it's just like -1 to hit, -1 to wound into a 4-up invuln. Sometimes you just fail all your 4-ups and the opposite happens, but sometimes like that and alone is like leveraging in WTC, you're trying to leverage every single ounce of points and pressure and diff you could get. And having like the ability to just pop a strat like that and be like, the math is that you kill like 3, but it's such like volatile, such low volume and like into 4-up invulns. It's like, oops, you killed 1, now you lose the game because I'm just collapsing.
That makes
And-
my soul happy. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I find Eldar struggle really hard into
Mhm.
wolves.
Yeah, they don't kill the Terminators well.
Nope.
And when you have Terminators and 15 Wolves screaming and running them down, your damage, the lack of damage is not the problem there. So you're just free to just chomp
Oh
everything
yeah,
that touches
Strength
you.
5 loves T3.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
it's, that strat is a war crime.
Yes, it is. They did not think of Thunderwolf Cav when they made that strat.
No.
They didn't even know they existed. So
All right, cool. Well, thank you for joining us, Alex. Thank you, as always, Aiden. We'll be back again tomorrow night, me and Aiden, for the weekly Council of the Fang. But thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Almost Functional Gaming. We appreciate the support of all followers of Russ and the Allfather. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, check out our merch store and Almost Functional Score Tracker on Amazon. Everything helps support the growth of this channel, and we appreciate it.